Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm really excited because I'm going to bring you this year's top 50 comics. And for 2021, I'm going to be bringing you the top 50 romance comics in my collection. Now, I've been doing this channel a little over the year now, and I think that if I'm known for anything in the YouTube comic community, it's probably for my romance. I don't see very many other people showing off much romance, and I'm getting romance in all the time. So when this year's round of top 50 videos started coming out, everyone's putting out their top 50 videos. I see a lot of people putting their own different spin on it, like their top 50 most valuable comics or their top 50 slabbed comics or whatever their slant is. I decided to do that sort of thing myself, but for me, it's going to be my top 50 romance. Now, last year I did just my top 50 overall books, and that was a lot of fun, and that list has changed significantly. I've been buying a lot of stuff the last year, like most people, not just because I need content for my YouTube channel, but also just the whole pandemic thing and being stuck at home. And honestly, doing these YouTube videos has got me sort of re-excited and reinvigorated about collecting comics. So there's been sort of a trickle down effect from that, just wanting to buy more because they're so cool. So I have gotten a lot of turnover in what I would consider my top 50 overall book list. I would say probably half of the books that were on my list last year would no longer be on my list, either because I got cooler things now that I like more, or because I had to sell off some of the stuff on my top 50 last year in order to fund some of my new purchases. So at some point I will do a whole new top 50, but that'll probably be next year before I get to that, because this year, again, top 50 romance. So before I jump into this, I do just want to say about this list, with romance, it's not really about the value. Yes, I'm taking that into consideration with some of my top books, because there's some books that are very expensive for me and cost me a bit of money, and I'm excited to have those. But with romance, a lot of it's very subjective. It's a lot of it has to do with what covers you like, what stories you like. And so we'll see as we go through here. For instance, I've got two books in my top 50 that are not even $10 books. And the other thing is, because it's so subjective, my own opinions on things have changed. This is my list today. The bottom like 20 books in particular could be, if I was doing this a different day, they might be completely different, because a lot of them are just certain covers that I like, or they have a certain significance, but there's a lot of other books in my collection that I like about equally. So this is what I pulled out today. This is my top 50 list today. If I was doing it yesterday or tomorrow, it would probably be a substantially different list, but I did my best. I went through my comics and I put together what I think is a nice representative show and tell of my top 50 romance comics here in 2021. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, we're going to start off a little bit weird. Number 50, I don't actually have. I can't find it. It's in my house somewhere. I had it on display, but luckily I took a video of it when I unboxed it, so I'm just going to show that here. This is an issue of Sweethearts that features a rare cover where it's a beefcake cover. So instead of the woman being the sex object on the cover, like most of these romance books, when you think about it, these are aimed at girls, and they're all heteronormative. So it's a little bit weird that they take these artists and they draw these really sexy women when they're really aimed at straight young girls. So this is one of the very rare covers where they actually show a big hunky guy with his shirt off, and there's a woman just ogling him in the background. So I love this cover for that. One of the very few beefcake covers. That's my number 50. It would be much higher on my ranking if I could find it. Everything's in a bit of disarray right here at my house. I've been reorganizing things, and I reorganized that right into oblivion, but it's around somewhere and I will find it. Okay, number 49, I'm going to cheat again a little bit, because this is actually a 3-pack. This lands on it's not the comics inside so much, although they are cool. Bronze Age romance from Charlton. But it's the fact that they're still in the original 3-pack bag. I love the 3-packs. And this is the only romance 3-pack that I have, so I'm really excited to own that. Coming in number 48, one of the sub-collections in my collection is Women's Lib. Of course, most of these are done by men, so most of the stories are very negative about women's lib and how it basically is going to ruin your chances of finding a love and a romance because man haters. But I still love collecting them, and this is probably my favorite of the covers. She's working on a car, and she's saying, "Sure, boys like you are hard to get, Mike, but so are after-school jobs. I love you, but I'm going to compete with you, even if I have to look like a sex object." And then down here it says, "I was a girl in hot pants, driven to steal a boy's job, a boy I loved. I was the daughter of women's lib." So, couple interesting notes about this. You wouldn't know it by looking at the artwork, but this is attributed to Craig Flessel, who was one of the very, very early DC artists right at the beginning of the golden age in the 1930s, and did these really great like old school illustration type covers on like action and adventure and detective in the 30s, and still around in the early 70s. Probably brought on by his friend Joe Simon, who was editing the book for a brief period of time. This is a definite Joe Simon joint here. So it's got a lot of other things I love. I love the DC heart instead of the bullet. I love yellow covers. I love partial frame covers. It's also got this little box up here that says, "My romance was ruined by Frizz." So anyway, yeah, just a great a great romance comic. And here we have, next up, it's Sweethearts 115. This is just a personal favorite of mine. I've mentioned a few times that I have a personal interest in romance comics with stories about Vietnam, since my father was in Vietnam. And this has a great Art Capello cover. It's just really compelling. We're going to see a couple more of this subgenre coming up here later in the countdown, but I've always just had a real soft spot for this. Sweethearts 115. Again, like I mentioned, the monetary value doesn't always factor in when it comes to romance books because it's kind of arbitrary. This is a book you can pick up for $3, and if you're thinking about starting a romance collection, this is a great sort of thing to look at because there's a lot of Charlton romance, particularly from the 70s, that have almost no value on a money, and you can get them very cheap, but have tremendous artistic value, and this is one of them. It's a keeper. And speaking of which, we're going to be talking a lot about this guy as we go through the list because there's a couple more of his covers. It is Time for Love number 40 with this great cover by the artist named Demetrio. Now, Demetrio only did 5 covers at Charlton, and 5 romance covers, I should say, and they're all fantastic. I think I've got 3 of them in my top 50. The other 2 would be in my top 100 at least. This one only ranks this low because the inset box here kind of blocks some of the artwork. If they had left that off and just had that, this would be even higher because his sense of design and color is fantastic, and we're going to see coming up here a couple great covers from Demetrio. Next up, we have Girls' Romances number 109. Now, as you can see, this has a Beatles cover. It's also drawn by Gene Colan. This is a book that I got quite a while ago now. It's low grade. The cover's detached, but I got it really cheap, and since then it's really taken off. All the Beatles appearances in comics, the romance cover appearances for Beatles are expensive sort of subgenre. A lot of them there's a lot of Charltons that have like little photos of the Beatles and stuff, but of the Beatles romance covers, I think this is probably the top one. Next up, we have Patsy Walker 122. Now, one thing I wanted to mention about my countdown here is I decided to disqualify all sort of the teen humor books like Archie. That includes other books in that genre, such as Patsy Walker, Patsy and Hetty, Tippy Teen, whatever. I decided to just rule them all out from the romance because I don't quite consider them romance. The exception being when Patsy Walker and Patsy and Hetty became pure soap opera books right towards the end of the run. I considered those to be eligible, which is why I have this great cover, but it's also a Vietnam story where her boyfriend went to Vietnam and was wounded in action. Here he is in the background in the wheelchair. And so it's a great combination of a great cover with great interior material that is of specific interest for me. Next up, it is Tender Love Stories #1, the first issue of the short-lived series from Skywald. Hard to get. Issue 1 is actually the easiest one of them to get. The one that I'm really having trouble getting is #3. So I'm still looking for #3, but for now, here's #1 on my list. Next up, it's a really, really nice copy of Girls' Romances 106. I love the color on this. It's just like a really simple design that's really dramatic, and it really pops with this background. My copy happens to be a really nice copy. It's probably in the 8 range, so that's why this copy is making my list here. Girls' Romances 106. Next up, Young Love 126. Now my copy, as you can see here, is signed by Paul Kupperberg. Cool cover. I think it's by Win Mortimer. Don't quote me on that. It might not be. But here's a cool cover. This has hits a number of spots for me. It's the last issue, really, of mainstream romance books. Yes, Charlton put out a few in 1980 and then in 1983. This is from 77, but those books were all reprints. So this I sort of count as the end of the classic romance genre in comics. Last issue, it also has a CB radio cover, and that's a particular point of interest to me. My grandfather was a truck driver, and growing up at this time in the 70s, there was this huge CB craze that I remember very fondly because it was part of my childhood. But also this has 4 stories in it, and each one is absolutely crazier than the last. Just some bonkers stuff in this issue. So it's one of my favorites to read. It's just checking off a lot of boxes for me. Next up, Young Romance 135. Absolutely fantastic gray wash cover, and a great cover by John Romita. The gray wash is probably added by Jack Abel because this is the splash page by Romita that they used for the cover, and the splash does not have the grayscale, and it's not, it just does not have the impact. But this great moody sky, and then here she is. Stewardess Bonnie Taylor back from one of her trips, and she's here to reunite with her lost love and does not know that he's passed away while she was gone. So it's just a great cover. I've always loved this one. Here is my Heartthrobs #2. Now, I've bid on a Heartthrobs #1 2 or 3 times now. So far, I haven't been able to get it. I'll be talking as we go through here about some of the stuff because this is what I call the DC Big 7. DC had 7 romance titles that ran from either the late 40s or early 50s all the way up into the 70s, and 4 of those were books that actually started at DC. And then there were 3 that they bought from other companies, and those are Young Romance, Young Love, and Heartthrobs, which was originally from Quality. And so this is issue 2 of Heartthrobs from Quality. Still trying to get that #1, but we are going to see some #1s later from some of the DC Big 7 books. Next up, I just mentioned this, but it's the I Love You 126. Now, when Charlton was trying to sort of revive the romance genre, they put out some books around 1980, then again in 83. This is from that first batch. It's actually October 79, but a bunch of reprint books. Now, this is a great, great cover by the legendary Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Now, the cover is also a reprint, but the original had one of those inset boxes like the Time for Love 40, and it kind of ruined it. So the reprint in this case is actually a lot cooler looking. Love the artwork. So I have a really nice copy. Just think the logo is really funky, late 70s logo. It's just everything about this I really dig. So that's I Love You number 126. Speaking of great covers from Charlton, it's Romantic Story number 92. Just check out this great cover. This is 100% because of this awesome cover. One Kiss Before Dying. Here they are in this amazing underwater tableau, just drawn so beautifully, having this kiss. I wouldn't really recommend kissing underwater like this, but I'm not a great swimmer. And we can see there's a shark approaching them. But this cover is so great. When I really got into romance and Charlton romance in particular, I made a checklist of all the Charlton books that I really wanted. This is the first one that I got because it's just such a cool cover. Speaking again of awesome Charlton covers, I've got a high grade copy of this. It's Haunted Love number 6. Now check out the artwork on this. Haunted Love is, as you can tell from the title, it's a hybrid series. So it's halfway between horror and romance, and it's a great entryway to Charlton romance. Only lasted 13 issues. There's some great covers in the run. I have another one in a little bit. This is one of my favorites, and I happen to have this really high grade copy, and just the art style is just so cool. So, Haunted Love number 6. Here we are, Marvel. My Love number 1. Marvel tries to get back into the romance genre when they have their big expansion of books. This is from, I think it's September 69. And I've had 3 copies of this, and I actually ended up keeping the middle one and selling off the most expensive, the highest grade copy. I overpaid for that. I rarely overpay for these, but that one I overpaid for, so I wanted to sort of get my money back. But it's got this. It's a great cover, great rich colors. This is a comic that really looks different depending on the color strike and the grade. A lot of books, for me, lower grade, higher grade doesn't really matter, but with this book, what you really want to look for is the color, because it can really pop. Next up, here's one of those DC Big 7 number 1s. It's Falling in Love number 1. This is the last of their titles. It's October. I think it's 55. It might be 56. But it's postcode. And the reason this is so low on my list is because this copy is so beat up. It's actually almost torn completely in half, the whole book. There's a tear that starts here and runs all the way to here. So I got it very cheap. It was only $18. So it's basically a placeholder. If it didn't have the tear but was still just in good condition, we're looking at probably 125, 150. So, for 10% of that, I think I got a pretty good deal even with the book almost torn in half. But it's basically a placeholder until I can get a nicer copy. But I'm really happy to have it. Falling in Love number 1, the first of my Big 7 number 1 issues. Next up, it's another Marvel. It's another My Love. It's My Love 14. This is probably the most in-demand issue of probably all of the Marvel romances from their 60s and 70s. That's because it has this really cool Woodstock cover. It also is giant size square bound 25-cent frame cover issue. So for all the people that are trying to put together collections of all the frame books from Marvel, this is one of the hard ones to get. And particularly in high grade, mine's a mid grade. I have had a couple of copies of this, but it's just a really cool book. DC did their own Woodstock issue as well a year after this. So this is cover dated November of '71. So it's a little ways after Woodstock, because Woodstock was the summer of '69. So it's a couple years later, but DC's version happened even a year after that, in Falling in Love 118. But anyway, My Love number 14, cool Woodstock cover. Here is Sweetheart Diaries number 45, a 10-cent Charlton. Love the cover. There's a number of Charltons from late 50s, early 60s that have covers that are basically swipes. I can't really call them homages, but swipes of Matt Baker covers. This is swiped from, I think it's a cover of Diary Secrets, but I'm not sure about that. It might actually be one of the other ones, one of the teenage. But anyway, there's one that's very similar, schoolgirl, and then the little panels in the background. On the original, the panels are broken up in a diamond pattern instead of squares, but that's basically it. But I just really dig the artwork and the design on this. I love yellow covers. I think the coloring on this is really nice, where the yellow is echoed in her hair, the red in her shirt. So it's just a really, really cool cover. Here's the other Marvel number 1, Our Love Story, with the John Romita cover. And we can see the difference, or we will see as we go through these. There's more DC Romitas coming up. This is Marvel Romita from a few years later. If you look at like the listings for this issue on eBay, you're going to see a lot of people that are basically saying, "Oh, it's basically got Mary Jane Watson in it, and Peter Parker on the cover." It's pure Romita. It does look just like Mary Jane, but the hair is brown instead of red. My copy has a date stamp on it, and it's I think it's July 25. And I think it's 69. I might be wrong. It might be 70 actually. These might be from 70. I forget. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Our Love Story number 1. Here's Girls' Romances number 105 as we count these down. It's got a really cool cover, unusual color scheme. I really dig all of the stuff. It also has a Roy Lichtenstein swipe panel inside, so it's hard to get and can be quite expensive as a result of that. I got this really cheap because I got lucky, and the person selling it didn't know about Roy Lichtenstein, didn't put it in the listing. No one else that does know seemed to have picked up on it, so I was really happy to get this. I still am missing a few of the Roy Lichtenstein romance comics, and they're getting more and more expensive all the time. We'll see another one later on in the countdown, but very excited to get this. Just a really cool comic. And here we have Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love number 1. It's a CGC 5.0. I showed this last year, and I still don't know why anybody bothered to slab this. It's a 5.0, so I don't really understand that decision. I was able to get it for what I think was a good price. I think it was $25. So, you know, I'm very happy with this. I love these runs. Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love and Sinister House of Secret Love. 4-issue gothic romance series from DC that was sort of trying to cash in on the gothic romance craze of the time, sparked by Dark Shadows. And as I've mentioned this a few times, but if you are interested in these books and you want to collect those runs, they changed the titles with issue 5 to Dark Mansion and Sinister House, so they look like, and they're, that they're just pure horror books, but actually they're not, because issues 5 of both series had already been completed when they decided to change the titles and switch genres to pure horror. So issue 5 of are actually both still gothic romance. So you want to make sure you get those issue 5s because they go under the radar, but they're really cool. Speaking of really cool, here's something from out from left field, like literally people standing in left field. It is First Love, number 34 from Harvey, and check out the colors on this, the blacks, the moon with the storm clouds, and here they are kissing, and then there's a creepy guy with a shotgun coming out of the woods as they're kissing. And it says, I met him in the midnight darkness. I hid our sin in shadows. You would too if you were man-starved. But just look at the awesome cover here. I got a good deal on this. It was only $15. Worth every penny of it. A lot of the Harvey books are really underrated. All right, book 26. It is Young Love, number 39. This is the first DC issue. It's the first issue of the Mary Robin Registered Nurse ongoing soap opera. I've almost got all of those. I'm just missing issue 40, which is turning out to be the hardest one to find. But just a really cool issue. I love these sort of first DC issues. We're going to see another one in a minute. Our Love Story number 5, book 25 on the countdown. I showed this last year. Yes, it has a classic, cool John Romita cover, but actually it's the interior with a groundbreaking, super awesome, influential, and fantastic story by Jim Steranko. Just fantastic mod art in that storyline. It's just a shame he didn't do any more romance books because it's so great. Next up, it's Sinister House of Secret Love, number 1. Goes with, of course, the Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love, number 1. I prefer the cover on this one to the other one. I like the, the classic sort of gothic mansion or castle with the woman in the white dress running away. So I just dig that one a lot. Love, 1970. We're going to see some more from the Love series coming up. It's a Nick Cardy cover, I believe. And it's the Super DC Giant. There's a couple of these, and I like the other ones better, but it's a really rare classic DC Giant size issue. Here's a cool book. It is Heartthrobs number 47. This is the first DC issue of Heartthrobs from 1957 after they bought the series from Quality, along with all the other Quality's other series. And it's just cool. I have a nice copy, not high grade exactly, but it looks really nice. And like I said, I'm a sucker for these first DC issues. Now, this one, again, is 57. The ones that they got from Prize and Crestwood, Young Romance and Young Love, are later. They're like 63 or 64. So this is much earlier. So it's sort of a first issue that goes a little under the radar. Looks like Tony Abruzzo on art on the cover. I think this is book 21 in the countdown. It is fantastic, amazing cover by John Romita for Girls' Romances number 61. Just look at that. I mean, that's it. Like, it's 100% on there because of the cover. Speaking of covers that I love, it's Romantic Story number Doesn't have the number on it. I think it's 45 maybe. It's from the late 50s, and what I love about it is it's just so sexy. It's got this sort of mid-century modern furniture, and the guy is home from work with his pipe, and he's got his loafers on, and his wife is like, "Put the paper away, dear. It's time to get it on." So it's really sexy in a way that a lot of romance covers aren't. There's a lot of romance covers that are angsty and romantic, but there's not that many that are sexy. So that's why this is on the list. Here's Secret Romance number 30. It's another Demetrio cover. Check out that awesome artwork. Again, he only did a handful of covers. They're all worth getting. None of them are particularly expensive, although finding these Charlton Romance in nice condition can be very difficult. There's one more coming up that's almost impossible to find with a nice white cover because the paper quality is so bad. And mine's definitely off-white. But here's a great cover by Demetrio. I love this one. Secret Romance number 30. Here we are. It's Love Stories, DC 100-page super spectacular number 5. And it's a really rare book. It's very, expensive. You can see that it was priced at $100, and that's basically what I paid for it, even though it's only like a 2 or 2.5. That's about it. It does have a cool back cover. Let me open it up so you can see that. So it's got this really cool back cover. The interior is basically reprints, so I don't really care that much. But in terms of collecting Bronze Age romance, this is the big must-have one. So for me, it's the importance of the book gets it on the list, even though it's not my favorite otherwise. Here's what I was just telling you about. It's Demetrio with Just Married 102. You can see this is sort of a dingy off-white. Structurally very nice. I've had several copies of this. They're all off-white like this. I have seen a white copy before, although the back cover was completely ruined. Hope springs eternal that I can upgrade this to a pure white copy. But it's really hard because Charlton used the worst paper they could possibly find. But none of that can really diminish just how great the art from Demetrio is. So here it is. It's Just Married 102. Another great cover and a nice copy that I have here. It's Girls Love Stories number 111. It's just finding these in nice condition is not easy, but when you do, it's worth it. Here is this is part of the April O'Day soap opera series, Hollywood Starlet. It's from 63 or 64, and it's just in this condition. The blacks, it's just stunning. Really happy to have that in good condition. Okay, book 16. It is Secret Romance number 1. Again, I do have a special place for the Vietnam romance covers. This is a particularly sort of moving cover. I have a really nice copy as well. So, this one sort of ticked all the boxes. First issue of Secret Romance. Really good one. Book 15, as promised, it's another issue of Haunted Love. It's Haunted Love number 5. I just absolutely love this cover. Let me see if I can adjust the light a little bit so I don't get as much reflection. Haunted Love number 5. The coloring on this is just fantastic. Book 14. Here's another one of the DC Big Seven first issues. It is Secret Hearts, #1. It's a low grade copy. Secret Hearts actually has a fair number of key issues because we're going to see one later on. Roy Lichtenstein took a lot of stuff from Secret Hearts in particular. But for me, the series it's not doesn't quite hit my boxes as much as some of the other titles. It's hard to explain. When you get enough of these issues from the different DC titles, you see the different styles, the different editorial sort of slants, the different artists working on it. And Secret Hearts is not one of my top of the 7 DC books, but I'm really happy to have this Secret Hearts #1. Next up, one of my favorite romance comics of all time. I just absolutely love this comic book, and I have a really nice copy. It's Young Love, #104, with Veil of Love, where a Vietnam veteran with post-traumatic stress falls in love with a nun, and it's written by Robert Kanigher, so it's got all the Robert Kanigher-ness that you could expect out of it. It's just an absolute classic. It's also one of the rare romance books where it's one story. It's not an anthology. The entire issue is one book length story. So this is a great one. This is one of the cornerstones of my collection. One of the first of the romance books that I really sort of dug into. I had to get it. LCS happened to have this copy for $8.50, and it's fantastic. Another Young Love. Young Love is my favorite of the DC titles, and this is an absolute classic. It's Young Love #68 with this awesome J. Scott Pike cover. The first issue with the life and loves of Lisa St. Clair ongoing soap opera. So I've always loved this cover. I'm kicking myself. I did have an opportunity several years ago to get a really high grade, a CGC 9.6, and I didn't want to pull the trigger for price reasons, and now I really wish I had. But my copy is really, really nice. It has a pop staple, so it's on a technical level. It is not nearly as nice as it looks. Without the pop staple, it would probably be a 7.5. With the pop staple, it's probably 5.5 or something, but looks tremendous. Book 11. It is Night Nurse #1. Now my copy is absolutely ragged. It's water stained. It's creased. It's got just it's stained. Yeah, it's really bad. I think one of the staples is popped. But the price was right, and the stories are fantastic. Night Nurse is one of my favorite series. Again, I love the soap opera series, and Night Nurse is about the best. I know there was, when I was collecting in the late 80s, Night Nurse was a punchline. They'd make jokes about Night Nurse and stuff in like Marvel Age, and eventually, many years later, I tracked it down, and actually I love it. Absolutely love it. Non-ironically, love this series. Got a complete run of all 4 issues. I wish it had lasted a lot longer, but Night Nurse #1. And now we're into my top 10 books. As I mentioned, some of these books actually aren't worth very much, including this next one, which is I only paid $5 for. But I was so excited to get it because it's came out of nowhere, and it's not a book you're going to see very often, if ever. It's Love 1977. Now, I've already shown you Love 1970, and we still have Love 1971 is still to come, of course. Those are 2 famous Bronze Age key romance books from DC. They're the only ones they put out. So when I saw this Love 1977, I was absolutely gobsmacked because I had never heard of it, had no idea what it was. It's not supposed to exist, but it does. It's from Australia, and the interior is mostly Charlton romance reprints in black and white. 96 big pages. But when they put it together, they decided to just steal the Love logo and idea from the DC books and put it on this Australian Charlton version. So, Love 1977. It's got a cool cover, and I don't see his. I think it's Tom Sutton, because he did a number of covers for Charlton Romance like this around this time. But cool cover, but it's just the fact that this exists, and I'm so excited to have it, so I can have all three, not just two, but all three of the Love issues all together. So that's why that's my number 10. Again, it's not worth much, but it's good luck finding one. It's the only one I've ever seen. Number 9 is Sweethearts, number 45. I showed this book last time in my top, I think it was my next top 50 countdown, and it's a really nice mid-grade but looks better copy, and it's Exhibit A in why some people in the romance community actually feel that Vince Colletta, yes, Vince Colletta is the best romance artist of all time. Just love the image. Vince Colletta, there's certain hallmarks to his work: the clouds, the flowers, the patterns. He also is clearly either channeling Matt Baker or possibly being assisted by Matt Baker, because they did work together at this time on a lot of things. But the man's face and figure are very, very Matt Baker. So it's prime 100% Vince Colletta. Tremendous. Like, this is from his best era and one of his best works. And people can continue that debate on whether Baker actually worked on this or not. But great. See, speaking of Sweethearts, it is Sweethearts number 31. Now, this is a lower grade copy. You can see there's a piece missing here, but it presents really well. And I just love the early Charlton romance books with the drawn covers. There's a period from like 50, 53, 54, when Charlton, they had a couple romance books before that, but when they really started getting into romance, and they acquired some titles from Fawcett, from there up until sort of the 57, 58 era, you see a shift at that point in the artwork. Some really great stuff from the late 50s, but that sort of early mid 50s Charlton covers are fantastic, and that's like prime era Charlton. So I was really excited to get this, and that's why it's in my top 10. Next up, you knew it was coming, one of my favorite romance comics. The only reason this isn't at number 1 is because it's not worth anything. It's Just Married, number 104. I have 8 copies of this book, and I'm always looking for more because I just love it. The only cover that I'm aware of that has an interracial kiss with a black person and a white person. There are a couple other covers. There's one from 1950, interracial kiss with it's an Asian woman and a white man, and then there's a couple in the early Bronze Age, like between 69 and 71, that imply interracial marriages. Romances, and there's one that has a kiss with I think one of the characters is Puerto Rican, but this is the only one from 1975 that I know of with a someone that's black and someone that's white. And besides the importance of it, what a tremendous image from Joe Staton. Like, the art's fantastic. In addition to being really difficult to find, period. I mean, I know I just said I had 8 of them, but it's taken me years to find 8 of them. It's really hard to find in high grade. This is my nicest copy, I think, and it's probably around a 7. The other thing is that a lot of as I've gotten more and more copies, I've discovered that they're out of register. but they're not all out of register. It seems as though as they were going through the print run, the plate started slipping slightly, and so if I have my 8 copies together, I can arrange them in an order from sharp to increasingly fuzzy. And so finding a copy that both has a sharp strike and is in nice condition is almost impossible. Book number 6. Check this out. Romantic Adventures #1. So this is one of my favorite romance titles. It's from ACG, and they had 2 romance titles. It was Romantic Adventures, which eventually became My Romantic Adventures. Not mine, but the title is called My Romantic. And Lovelorn, which eventually became Confessions of the Lovelorn. Both of those titles ran for many, many years, from the late 40s. I think this is 49. They ran up through about 65. So over 100 issues for both titles, and some just great stuff. I love ACG, and and I love the logo and the title of this book, Romantic Adventures. I just love it, and I love the way the logo looks. So really excited to get issue 1. This is not the biggest key in the run. Issue 50 is the biggest key, and there's another one right around there, either 49 or 51, I forget. Both of those are more important than issue 1, but this is obviously it's issue 1, so really excited to get that. So here we are, top 5. Did a whole video about Roy Lichtenstein, so I have mixed feelings about this, but being able to get Secret Hearts 83 checked off and in my collection was a big deal for me. This is the issue that has the crying girl image that Lichtenstein used. Drowning girl. It's the one where the woman is drowning in the ocean surf while she's crying about her lost love. It's a full-page splash by Tony Abruzzo, and this is the source for that. And so it's of the Lichtenstein issues, the ones that he bought and then ripped off the artists, this is the most important and most expensive, because Drowning Girl is probably his most famous work. On the war side, it's probably Wham, which is in All American Men of War 89. But on the romance ones are more expensive than the war ones, and on the romance side, this is the big one. So I did a whole video, one of my whole videos, about getting this, but that's why it's at number 5. Even though I'm not a fan of Roy Lichtenstein, it does have a lot of historical importance, and just getting it in my collection was a big deal for me. So number 5 book, it's Secret Hearts 83. Here we are, book number 4. It is Young Romance number 150. I don't think I need to talk too much about this book. It's an image that all romance collectors and even a lot of people in general are familiar with. It's probably the most iconic of the DC romance covers. They use it in posters and postcards and merchandise and keychains. And when you think of romance, this is the image that a lot of people think of when they think of romance comics, is this here, Young Romance 150. I've been lucky enough, I've owned 4 copies. But the first one I got, this one here, is still the nicest one I've been able to find in the wild, and it's a 5.5. So I've had some luck finding this. One book you will not see in my countdown is Falling in Love 99, because as much as I love that comic and want to have it, I don't have it yet. I have not yet found a copy of that. But for some reason, this one I'm just having a lot more luck with. So it's just a tremendous comic, a tremendous cover. Again, I got this at my LCS about 10 or 12 years ago now, and I paid $6.50 at the time, and now it's probably $150 to $200 book. But it's one that's not going anywhere in my collection, because it's just, again, it's one of the cornerstones. This and the Young Love 104 were 2 of the first like big books that I got when I was really getting into romance. All right, we're getting down to it. Book number 3. It is Girls Love, and it's number 52. I always want to say 57 for some reason, but it's 52. And this has this amazing like watercolor, like gray wash city scene where we have this it's from 1957, I think, and we have this classic image of a basically a greaser kissing this woman, and behind them is sort of like just you see the neon signs, and the cityscape, the silhouettes, but all done in this sort of fog of romance, and it's just tremendous. Absolutely one of my favorite covers. My copy is really nice. It's probably about an 8. It's got a tiny bit of paper loss down at the bottom, just right there, just a tiny bit. And that's about it. I mean, it's really beautiful. I paid for it for the condition. I went to the mattresses for this one, and I managed to win it. So I had an undercopy that I sold once I got this, but it's just absolutely beautiful. So that's my number 3. Book number 2, it is Girls Romances number 1. Again, one of the DC Big 7 first issues. Of those, I have 3 of them. I have Falling in Love, and I have Secret Hearts, and I have Girls Romances. I am still missing Girls Love. That will give me all 4 of the original DC books, and then I'm missing all of the ones that they got Heartthrobs from Quality, and then Young Love and Young Romance from Crestwood. Those are the most expensive of them, particularly Young Romance, as the OG, the original romance book. Young Romance 1 is the most expensive. But I do have 3 of them, and this one, Girls Romance, is kind of the flagship of the 4 DC books. It ran, I think, to issue 180. And so long running series. Got this at a local show a couple years ago, and really excited about it. And finally, this is it, number 1. I've teased it already, so it's not a surprise to anybody. It's Love, 1971, aka Super DC Giant number 20, S21. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but anyway, it's Love, 1971, with this fantastic cover. I talked earlier about Demetrio, who only did a handful of covers over at Charlton, and they're all worth collecting. Well, the cover art's here. Charlie Armentano one-upped him, because this is the only comic cover that he ever did, and it's a 100% stone cold classic. So really excited to get this a couple years ago. It's one of the big Silver Age keys. Hard to find, definitely harder to find than Love 1970. And just absolutely love the wonderful design, the colors, the whole thing. So this is it, my number 1 romance book. So thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know below which ones are your favorites, which ones that you liked, and tell me what you think of the whole thing. And as always, I really appreciate everybody watching. So until next time, and until next year when I have an all new top 50, that's it, and I'll see you later.